Welcome to lesson number 2 of module 6 from the Healing Brain Masterclass, Depression and Sleep Disorders. I'm your host, John Malanka with The Sacred Plant. The more we learn about brain disease and injury, we recognize mind and body are not separate. Changes in our mood may be one of the best indicators of mind-body connection. When we feel extremely stressed, we might have a hard time remembering where we put our keys. When we feel panicky, our breathing becomes short and our muscles tighten. And how about when we feel depressed? We might just be unable to go to sleep or even have pains in our abdomen. Today, mood disorders are now recognized in patients diagnosed with either Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, and traumatic brain injuries. So please join us now as we ask our expert, Dr. Daniel Stein, to share his approach in overcoming these symptoms and issues. Welcome back, Dr. Stein. We're going to be talking about, and welcome back to our Sacred Plant family, where we'll be discussing sleep disorders in this lesson. We ended up talking about sleep and being interrupted with sleep and how important sleep is. Can you talk about how important sleep is, not only for healthy bodies, but especially for patients that are going through brain disorders?
Sleep is absolutely one of the most important things to encourage in people recovering from illness. If you don't sleep well and you're ill, the recovery takes longer for not only neurological conditions, but other conditions. Now, we've been talking about how patients with mood issues, anxiety, depression, oftentimes have sleep disorders, and how conventional therapy as well as cannabis therapy can be helpful. Specifically, I would just point out that sleep is probably the number one reason that people come to the cannabis clinic. And here in the neurology office, these patients also have other neurological conditions. So they come in with their Parkinson's and say they can't sleep.
Yep.
They come in with a history of epilepsy or brain injury, and they can't sleep. That comes up as part of the general conversation.
Yeah. What about the patients like myself? I don't have a problem falling asleep, but then I wake up. And so working with you, I have found something that's worked with me to sleep through the night. And so do you have those patients that come in here, and what can you talk about with that? Not only with conventional medicine, but also exercise, breathing, and cannabis.
You have a problem staying asleep.
Staying asleep.
Some patients have trouble falling asleep.
Yeah. Which I've had before too, and that's, I've had insomnia before, and it's an awful feeling, and you are ruined for the next day or 2 days because of this.
Because you couldn't fall asleep.
Because I couldn't fall asleep.
So we call that initial insomnia.
Okay.
Whereas waking up in the middle of the night is a problem with sleep maintenance. And there's a host of other words we use to describe the exact type of sleep disorder. Restless legs syndrome, REM sleep disorder. Sleep disorders are a whole category in which some neurologists specialize. Mm-hmm. So the very first thing we do when confronted with a patient who complains of sleep disorder, try to find out exactly what it is. When is the sleep a problem? Mm-hmm. Are there certain things that are triggering it? What remedies have they tried? Are they dependent on sleep aids? Uh-huh. Things like that. So depending on the problem, we try to tailor the medication.
Okay. So you said tailor some medication for them. Let's talk about both sides. One with sleep aids and over the counter, as well as prescribed sleep aids. And then 3, we'll talk about cannabis and helping with sleep. So if you can talk about the success and dangers of some of these sleep aids.
For most patients we see in the general neurology clinic, or for example at the rehabilitation hospital, we use conventional medical therapy for patients who are having problems with sleep that don't respond to changes in sleep hygiene. We always try sleep hygiene maneuvers first. Those are things like not using coffee or other caffeinated beverages, not napping after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, not overdoing it with the electronics at night for some of the younger patients who have insomnia. And we do our best to avoid using any medicine, and sometimes we succeed. Even exercise in the evening sometimes is helpful.
Yeah.
But when those sleep hygiene maneuvers don't work, in the regular clinic, oftentimes we will use a prescription medication to try to calm people down. That's usually what it is. It's anxiety. And we use different medications, usually anti-anxiety medications, to help patients calm down. I don't like to use the benzodiazepines so much, the Valium type medications we talked about, clonazepam and so forth. And I don't like to use those medications for very long. But for an acute period of time, trying to get someone over the hump so that they can get to sleep, we do use pharmaceuticals.
And you find it helpful?
It is helpful.
Yeah.
Those medicines work.
Yeah.
The problem is when you start using them every night forever and people become dependent on them. And they also have sleep disruption at times when those medicines wear off, and they'll get up and, like you said, you'll feel groggy, you won't feel well, you'll have a little bit of a hangover from the medicines the next day. And so those medications are not optimal.
So over the counter, and you talk about dependent. I've been dependent on a cannabis product for sleep. And when I travel sometimes and I don't bring it, I'm sitting up in the hotel going, God, I wish I brought it, on the plane, and I didn't do it. We talk about cannabis and not being addictive, but it can be habit forming in a way, like an example of, I know I can't sleep if I don't drink 3 glasses of water, and I don't drink 3 glasses of water, and I sit there and I'm wide awake, and I blame it on not drinking the 3 glasses of water.
Dependence and addiction are two different things.
Yes.
Patients who take high blood pressure medications to keep their blood pressure under control are dependent on that medication.
Yes.
Being dependent on a medication is not a bad thing.
Okay.
We use medications, cannabis and conventional medications, in a way that helps us feel better, hopefully. And then we depend on those because we may have a chronic condition. No harm, no foul.
Good.
Addiction is a different story. Addiction occurs when someone has a craving or a preoccupation with obtaining a certain drug.
Okay.
And that preoccupation interferes with day-to-day social functioning in a way that limits their ability to carry on without getting that drug and having it and being ready to use it. So it's more of a social disruption. It's an inability to function without either getting the drug or spending time thinking about how to get it. That's an addiction.
Okay.
Then there's physical addictions, which result in physical withdrawal symptoms when you stop taking the medication. There's psychological addictions. There's thinking you need to do it when maybe you don't need to. So in general, dependence is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. We depend on medicines to help us. Mm-hmm. We depend on our caregivers to look out for us. But addiction is a different story.
Okay. And the brain is a powerful thing. When you have that in here, I don't have it, I know I'm not going to sleep, I know I'm not going to sleep. And you need to stop the brain. And I've been in that situation where I need to stop the brain. And since this is a brain masterclass, that's why I brought this up as well. So what would you, side effects? I know there's some side effects to a lot of these prescribed medications as well as over the counter. Do you see those as well?
All the time. Benadryl.
Okay.
Very common. Patients use Benadryl because it causes drowsiness. Of course, Benadryl, which is made from diphenhydramine, which is the generic term, diphenhydramine, is the active ingredient in lots of sleep aids. It's marketed under different brand names. But diphenhydramine, which causes drowsiness and is supposed to be used as an allergy or decongestant medication, induces drowsiness, and people use it to help them sleep. But what folks don't realize often is that diphenhydramine acts as an anticholinergic, which can cause confusion, dry mouth, constipation, and sometimes drug interactions. So that's over the counter. Mm-hmm. For some reason, it's extremely popular. It works to help with inducing sleep, but it has a host of potential side effects.
Gotcha. You mentioned, caffeine and exercise. What about diet?
Diet's important. Timing of when you eat and when you go to sleep is important. Some people think that they can have that late night hot wings and beer and then just get into bed and everything will be okay. Not always. Yeah. Alcohol can sometimes disrupt.
I was thinking more hot wing because even last night, I was like, okay, it's midnight, but I am hungry, so I had a little snack. And sometimes in my mind, if I fill my stomach up it'll I'll fall asleep.
That can happen.
Yeah.
That can
But
happen.
doesn't it bring you back to when you're a baby and your mom breastfeeds you before and you fall asleep?
Yeah.
Fill up your stomach.
That can happen, and patients do feel sleepy. People feel sleepy after eating. We have a phrase for it. It's postprandial narcolepsy.
Okay.
You've heard of
I've
narcolepsy.
had it before too. Yeah.
So postprandial is after eating, people get drowsy and they fall off to sleep, especially when they're listening to one of my lectures. So go figure.
You talking to me? So, so what about? Do you recommend meditation at all?
Oh, I think meditation, yoga, other types of holistic therapies to help with sleep are great.
That's something that Corinne and I did on a nightly basis. We would get ready for bed, and then we would sit there and stretch and talk and watch our nightly show. And I still continue doing that every night before bed. I'm still in that routine, and it does help. Stretch before you go to bed. You've been sitting all day. We've been sitting all day. In between each take, we get up, we stretch, we walk around, we move. I think that's important to keep your body in line, but also your muscles. When things tense up, you start having knee problems, you start having hip problems, and then you can't sleep, and it's all connected. And so again, I am a big advocate of stretching as well. And I try my meditation, but the mind, again, it's a powerful thing. It overtakes my calming thoughts, and so I need to work on that myself. Let's talk about sleep and depression. They go kind of hand in hand. So can you talk about that?
Depression is one of the leading causes of insomnia, as well as anxiety. Patients who have mood problems like depression and anxiety have trouble falling asleep because of a lot of what you've described, not saying that you're depressed or anxious, but they get into bed and they think and the wheels are turning and they can't relax. It's a problem. In order to sleep, you have to relax. And if that means turning on the TV to distract you, that's totally fine. If it means taking a medication, I suppose that's fine. But the truth of it is, patients and pretty much everybody who has a problem with mood, including depression, will have trouble falling asleep.
Gotcha. Can you share any personal case studies with your patients that have come in here, where you've seen the benefits of cannabis not only help with sleep, depression, but getting off other opioids as well?
We have lots of patients that come in having self-medicated, and we do our best to get them off those medications and help them induce sleep in a healthful way. All the time, almost every day, John, in our clinic, we will have a patient come in complaining of insomnia. Cannabis is very effective. THC, along with linalool and myrcene. Those are the three key ingredients that seem to work best for inducing sleep.
For a nice sleep, huh? Getting the Z's.
I might add that some patients, when they use THC for the first time, they may feel a little activated because it's a new experience for them, and they may have actually trouble falling asleep initially, and we encourage them to stay with it.
Okay.
Because after 4 or 5 nights, that initial feeling that the THC is making them feel a little weird, that goes away, and then the sleep comes.
So what do you think a good formulation or milligram dosing should be? A lot of patients think that we've spoken to say, I just want to take as much as I can just to knock me out. And can you share the dangers of that, as well as living alone for patients that live alone, some senior patients that live alone and taking high doses, maybe having to get up in the morning to go to the bathroom?
The best dose is the dose that provides the benefit without the side effects.
Okay.
It's that simple.
Okay.
Too much of anything is no good. You're absolutely right. Prolonged effects of the medications can lead to side effects at times of the day or night that you don't want them to.
Okay.
I usually start with something on the order of 2 to 4 milligrams of THC. So that would be 1 or 2 small puffs on a vaporizer, for example. With the terpene profile I mentioned, linalool and myrcene, that usually does the trick. Okay. If patients are not interested in using THC, we can use CBD, and that will work also, although in small doses, CBD can also have an activating effect. So in the 5 to 10 milligram range for new users, the first few days may not bring the desired result, and those patients need to stay with it. They need to crank up the dose a little bit, maybe to 25 or 30 milligrams, and then you get that CBD-related sedation.
Gotcha. So before we go on to the next lesson, can we talk a little more about the benefits of sleep when it relates to brain disease and brain illnesses?
Patients with brain-related disorders need sleep in order to facilitate the regenerative process. Healing occurs when you're sleeping. It helps with memory. It helps you recover from perhaps your therapy the day earlier and prepare you for what may be a difficult day the next. Remember, patients with neurological conditions oftentimes have disabilities that require a lot of energy expenditure during the day. You need that restorative sleep so that you can function the next day.
And what's a good amount of hours for sleep?
I think 7 hours for most people, generally. Young people may need more. Older patients seem to need less. But as a general guideline, I would say 7.
Okay, where are you in there?
I'm kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I think I'm around 5 or 6. But all right, well, I thank you for that. Thank you for this insight. And again, if you have any questions, please join us for our live Q&As where we can get in depth and you can ask any questions to Dr. Stein and myself regarding sleep or anything that we've covered in this series. Next, we'll move on to anxiety, which is another big topic.
Indeed.
Big topic. So thank you again. This is John Malanka with the Sacred Plant. Joined with me today is Dr. Daniel Stein here in Sarasota, Florida. Bye-bye. Did you know being sleep deprived leads to several other issues, including enhanced feelings of depression? And we are now so happy to hear that medical cannabis is really becoming a powerful tool in overcoming sleep deterrence. In this lesson, we learned that the first steps is to recognize brain diseases, injuries, and disorders is to understand your metabolic disruption and possible complications. So take a personal check-in, feel your body and where it might be nudging you, such as a small consistent pain in your abdomen or a rush of anxiousness and adrenaline for no apparent reason. I always recommend checking in with yourself often. No one knows our bodies as well as we do. By having these checks, you'll also be able to gauge your overall wellness from one day to the next and spot these early signs easier. Coming up in our next lesson, Anxiety, Panic, and Your Endocannabinoid System, we'll shine a special light on the important role your endocannabinoid system can play in fine-tuning your metabolic system to respond with less agitation and action to our innate response of fight or flight feelings.